All right, happy Tuesday, class, and welcome to week number 6. That is right, week number 6, and I now have the correct number of fingers up, week 6, for your 7305 class, which is your Foundations of Library and Information Sciences course. As always, I am your professor, Dr. Jace Austin, and we are going to just get into it. I've got a few course updates for you, and then I'm going to show you an excerpt from a video that I really like from about 2 years ago now, but it's a video that is actually outside of this normal realm of LIS education, and it is something that is affecting what I call quote unquote real world people. But we are going to look at a video that was put out by a popular gamer on YouTube, and he is going to discuss how we can get a little bit of conflict when preservation butts heads with intellectual property. And you know that both of those are very, very big deals in LIS, and so I just kind of like to show this video because I like to see where the students are. Do the students prioritize preservation? Do they prioritize copyright and intellectual property? Or is it a little more, I don't know, debatable and gray than it really seems on the surface? So we are going to get into that video in a few minutes, but first, like I said, a few course updates. Let's get into that. First of all, again, as you all know, or at least as you should know, you do have an assignment coming due this coming Sunday night, and that is going to be assignment number 4, your history timeline. And as I said last week, you do have some examples of history timelines and so forth. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this because I spoke on it quite a bit last week, and there's no sense of repeating things, especially when I want to keep this video under 20 minutes because I know you all don't want to suffer but so much listening to my voice. But here it is again. If you have any questions about the history timeline, please email me from any town, anytime, anywhere, any place, and just let me know what your questions are. I will be very glad to answer them, and hopefully you ask me soon enough that I will be able to answer them prior to your assignment coming due and give you a good answer that will inform your performance on this assignment. Again, this assignment is meant to be fun, so please, please, please approach it that way. There is no reason why the history timeline should be stressing any of you out. I do think that the annotated bibliography and the literature review that you all have already done should be among the harder assignments in this course, but we'll see when we get the assignment 5. And I will be talking about assignment 5 next week because I definitely need to talk about that assignment. Now, when it comes to the literature review that you all turned in about a week and a half ago, most of the grades were actually good. First of all, the issues that I was seeing with APA citation, I am no longer seeing those issues. So I'm very proud that you all have made that progress. For those of you who lost points on assignment 2, don't worry about it. This course is designed so that you can right your ship, so to speak, if your ship is off balance for a little while. So while I did see quite a few APA errors in assignment number 2, in assignment number 3, you all clean those up like that. And I am very happy to see that. What I want to see is growth. What I want to see is evidence that I am preparing you for some of the other instructors in CISL who admittedly may be more difficult than I am. So I'm trying to get you all a little bit of preparation. That's what I want for you all. I just want you all to go into some of these courses with some of these instructors who may be a little harder or a little more challenging, and know that your handles on citation are not going to be things that prevents you from getting good grades in other classes. So I am very happy to see that progress. The literature reviews overall were very, very good. I think the lowest grade that I even assigned was a 37 out of 40. So that shows that you all did a very, very good job with the literature review. I'm very happy to see that. And I can see that you're taking the assignment seriously, which again is what I want to see. And again, I mentioned this last week, but if you don't understand the relevance or why you had to do a literature review, it's going to come out as you look at more academic literature, because what you are doing is you are learning how to identify gaps in research, gaps in already researched knowledge. And that is how you identify where you are going to do your research if you become a librarian who also publishes. So I was very excited to see those improvements. One mistake that I saw several of you make that I just want to make really clear right now, just to really avoid some confusion here. So that APA capitalization chapter that I scanned for you all and that I did an announcement for because I wanted you all to look over that. Yeah, so that was pertaining specifically to the reference list, and it looks like some of you all didn't catch that. So in the in-text of your paper, you are still going to abide by normal capitalization rules. But it's when you get into that references list that you are going to have to adjust your methods of operations, so to speak. So I just want that to be clear. Again, look at the Purdue OWL or try to get a hold of the APA 7 citation style manual if you have concerns or are confused about when to use the special capitalization system the APA has. But that was only for a few of you, and I was very lenient on deducting points for that. I did deduct, but I didn't deduct terribly. But for the most part, I am very happy with the progress that I'm seeing out of you all. You are on the right track, and I do think that you all are preparing yourselves. I'm not preparing you. You're preparing yourselves. But I think that you all are preparing yourselves very well to be very successful in this program for the duration of your time with CISL. So I think I have some very, very promising librarians, or librarians in training, I should say, in my class here. And I look forward to seeing what you all do for the rest of your time here at CISL, as well as for the rest of your careers. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention real quick before I get into that gaming video is this announcement here that I put up earlier today. So for those of you, okay, let me just say it straight up. There's no need for me to BS you all. I just keep it real. That's what Dr. Jace always has done and always will do. There are a lot of people attending library schools throughout this country right now. So you are going to need to distinguish yourself if you are looking to get a job or looking to get a better job, and you're going to need more than just that MLIS and a cute face. I hate to say it. You are going to need to distinguish yourselves. And so one tip for distinguishing yourselves will be this video on volunteering and job outlook of LIS professionals. I was very glad that Drexel made this a public webinar. So, because it's definitely something that they probably could have kept to their own students or to a select body of students, but they made it public. And so I was definitely happy for that because I could share it with you all. If you can make the time, I do recommend you all look at that webinar because you may learn some tips and some things that can set you apart from your competition once you are ready to hit the job market. And that's what I want to see. And that's what all of the professors here at CISL want to see, is for you all to be the most successful of the LIS graduates and for you all to get placed in great jobs coming out of school and to be on a proper career trajectory toward whatever your dream job would be. So having said that, we will now take a look at this video. Again, what I want you all to take from this video, and I might even make an optional discussion prompt for this, but what I want you all to take from this video is that two things that we hold dear in the LIS field are kind of at odds given what Game Dave is describing in this video here. So again, he's talking about preservation and access, and he's talking about intellectual property. And really what he presents puts these two things kind of at odds with each other. So I want to see how you all feel about that. We will go ahead and pull this video up. Let me pause for a second. All right, so we are going to get into this. Enough with me. Let's hear what Game Dave has to say. Then I'm going to share a few thoughts on that. And yes, if you want to discuss further, you can hit the student free for all, or I can even put up an optional discussion prompt for you all. But we are discussing intellectual property in our module this week. So I think this is very fitting. I'm sorry. Let's do it.
All right, I'll come out and say it. We are headed down a very slippery slope that could lead to the death of emulation, ROMs, and seriously harm video game preservation. Okay, emulators and ROMs, the ability to download a software program that can emulate an old school video game console and download digitally dumped ROMs of games that you can load into that emulator and experience games you may have never had the chance to play before. And I remember the very first time I ever experienced an emulator. It was electronics class in high school on one of the programming station computers. A friend of mine brought up this program and I was suddenly playing Super Mario Kart on a PC. I hadn't experienced that game since I played it all night, all day with my best friend in elementary school. I was a sophomore, I think, 2002, 2003, and the emulator was ZSNES, but at the time I didn't know it was an emulator. It just was this big, blue, full-screen, DOSy interface. ROMs of classic video games have become such a common staple in this community. Whether you play all your games digitally, or you're still like me and you have to have all the physical games and hardware, all of us can appreciate the benefits and the contributions that emulation and ROMs have given to our community, and what they've done to enhance the way that we experience those old school games now. And the chance to experience all those classic games from my childhood and build that nostalgia, it inspired me to reclaim my passion for video gaming, and I started collecting. But that might be an experience that becomes an old, tall tale from long ago if things continue down this dangerous path. To go back to the beginning, the recent beginnings of this, Nintendo filed a lawsuit against two major ROM websites. Serious business, we all know you don't mess with Nintendo. And they didn't push back. The sites got rid of anything Nintendo-related, ROMs included, and I believe one of the sites is actually completely wiped away. Now, these are not ROM websites that I have ever frequented, and I wasn't really informed about all this stuff that was going on until today, when I heard that MU Paradise, a site that I do use, was updating and making some changes. That change? The ROMs are gone. Not accessible. They knew dangerous times were coming for a publicly well-known website, and MU Paradise was my go-to site for emulation and ROMs. I don't even know how long I've been visiting the site. It was easy to use, it was safe, and it was filled with nearly every classic video game you can imagine. Obscure, rare, common, unknown, imports. Everything. And it's over. And after 18 years of service, databasing, preserving, archiving these amazing pieces of video game history, it's gone. But Dave, ROMs are illegal. Why do you care? You've got tons of physical video games. Not everybody is crazy like me. And how do you think I found out about a lot of these games? Emulation. Testing out vintage video games and realizing, oh man, I have got to add that to the collection. I want to have that experience. I've always used emulation as a way to play test video games, but there are so many other benefits, and I mean, a major one is digital archiving. Can we trust every single game development company to maintain digital archives of all these classic experiences? Are they going to care about them the same way that we do? Let alone all the prototype games that have been found that would have never, ever been released, thanks to these emulation and ROM communities. Our community, the gaming community, these games have seen the light of day and people have been able to experience them for the first time ever. I'm worried about the future of video game preservation. Sure, there are museums and people with massive collections that care about the history of video games, but not everyone can go to those people's houses and go to those museums and experience the games and play any game they want. Is it going to become this weird database that's not accessible by the public, and the only way you can experience the pre-cloud era of gaming is by finding a physical cartridge or disc? That sucks. And don't even get me started on importing. I mean, come on. ROM translations? I mean, it's the main way that I get a chance to experience Japanese language games in English, all thanks to the community. It all comes back to that community. Fan translations, allowing me the chance to experience what I never could have, making these games international that were always closed off from us. All right, I'm sorry, this is not your typical Game Dave experience. I'm gonna need like a fart joke or something here soon. Do you know what else ROMs do? They help protect valuable artifacts of gaming. You think somebody who happens to have the rare Earthbound Zero prototype on cartridge is going to want to just throw that in their front loader NES and play it all day? I don't think so. Well, maybe just once to test it and make sure it's legit. You got to protect that thing. Artifacts. Do you think I use that term on accident? No.
Okay, so I'm going to pause him right there. So think about some of the words that he was saying while he was making his argument there. He mentioned words like database, preservation, artifacts. These are LIS terms. These are terms that you will see in the library realm, in the archive realm, in the museum realm, all of that. And really what Game Dave is doing here is he is taking a side in what has essentially become a preservation and access versus copyright issue. And I want y'all to see this for what it is, because these are issues that even exist outside of the walls of libraries, museums, archives, etc. So even though this man is talking about video games, he's talking about something that some people would say is even trivial, something that isn't important to our society. What he is doing is he is saying that because the company Nintendo flexed its intellectual property muscle, so to speak, it has put a huge dent in the preservation and the ability to access things that, honestly, Nintendo isn't even making that much of a profit on anymore. So here's the deal. We actually do have things, we have laws and rules that allow for intellectual property to go into the public domain after a certain period of time. And that's something that you all can look up on your own accord if you want to know more about it. Some of that is also going to come out in some of the readings for this week. But what I'm saying here is that it's really, really difficult when we as information professionals find ourselves at odds with each other or at odds with ourselves, because some of these values that we hold near and dear kind of start to work against each other. So yes, I would be curious to know. And again, you can either hit the student free for all, or if I get the demand to, I will make an optional discussion board prompt. But tell me, if Nintendo is not producing or not getting that much of a profit anymore on these things, that a lot of them were from the 8-bit and the 16-bit eras of video gaming, from basically from 1985 to 1994. If there is not a lot of profit to be made, do you think that Nintendo should still exercise its rights to licensing and intellectual property and not allow for these things to be experienced by the everyday person, the person who may not have access to the consoles even that could play these games, or they don't have the money to get more of these games or anything like that. Do you think that Nintendo should still protect its intellectual property rights, or do you think that the websites should be allowed to make these emulations, these ROMs, available to those that would otherwise never get to be able to experience these fun and a lot of times context-setting video games without emulation because they're too expensive or because they're too obscure or whatever the case may be? I was really centered by the use of the term artifact by Game Dave, because when I think of artifacts, usually I am thinking of museum pieces that are hundreds or thousands of years old. But Game Dave applies that term artifact even to video games that are only 25 to 35 years old. So that is that's just something to think about. If you have a cartridge of a video game that was released on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987, do you really want to put that in a console, knowing that it could potentially even damage the game itself? Sometimes just putting the game in its packaging and just letting it be is the way to preserve it. And then if you actually want to play the game, maybe emulation gives you a better opportunity to do so. So these are some of the concepts that I want you to wrestle with in your head, because they are going to enter into a larger discussion when you get into librarian practice. And I will give you an example of that. So at one point, there was sort of a crowdsourcing initiative on Twitter, wherein librarians who could not get access to certain publications or certain information, they were basically using a hashtag and reaching out to other librarians on Twitter who might have instant access to those materials or whatever was desired, and getting those things from other librarians via Twitter. This was a major concern when it came to copyright. And we as librarians and as information professionals need to be respectful of intellectual property laws and intellectual property rights. So again, this has a translation into broader and wider practice, which is why I am subjecting you all to this today. So yes, what wins out in your opinion? What wins out? Does the preservation and the access win out? Or do you side with allowing the intellectual property holder to retain intellectual property rights, even when there would likely be a very minuscule profit impact if these things were, I guess, released into public domain or allowed to be accessible without fear of copyright and intellectual property claims? I would love to see where you all fall on this, and hope that some of you will take the time to think about this and maybe post something in the discussion boards appropriately. But anyway, that is my time. As always, I am Dr. Jace. Peace and grace, and I look forward to talking to you all next week, as well as getting those history timelines on Sunday night. Please stay safe and good luck.